So this is a relatively informal uh, closing of the Open Ed Week this year, and it focuses on LibreText and AI. And informal in the sense that a lot of the stuff that we'll be talking about will not have very pretty pictures in order to be able to talk about these and to showcase them. And we'll talk about some of the things that's more future related. But in order to be able to discuss that, I need to talk about some of the stuff that we've done in the past. So, as I mentioned before, this is the end of the Open Ed Week. If you are interested in taking a look at any of the other five presentations that were part of the LibreText contributions to the Open Ed Week, even though it's now a month, basically. You can go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com it's / LibreText, or just go to youtube.libretext.org. It will go to the same site. And we've already posted those other videos, and this video should be posted within a few hours after this presentation is over. Um, and I encourage you to be able to do that. One in particular that's important for this discussion was a Wednesday presentation that Neil Voss, who is here from Roosevelt University, is to talk about how he used AI in order to facilitate the construction of homework questions, and more specifically, advanced homework questions, not just simple multiple choice or true false type of things, which are, I don't want to call trivial, but certainly more trivial than more advanced capabilities. And he'll talk about more about that later on in this presentation. So let's get things on. I just want to check again to see if we have our guest from OpenEd Global, and it does not look like we do. So here we go. So this is the general overview of what I want to be discussing today. One is just a reminder generally about what we need OER for and where LibreText comes in, and our modus operandi. And that's particularly important because that is what we're able to dovetail into with our AI capabilities. That's a little bit more difficult in order to do if you have a different approach toward doing OER. Go into a little bit about AI, OER, and LibreText and how it's all mixed together. Talk a little bit about what we've done in the past with AI, or at least with the goals that we want to be able to use AI for, and then basically the rest of the conversation will be focusing on this AI initiative up here. So, the goal of this presentation was not necessarily to discuss what we've done, because we have lots of videos in order to be able to do that. It was to discuss what we plan on doing. So for the last year and a half or so, we've been preparing fairly nice proposals addressing how AI can be used within our platform and should be supported by either federal or state governments in order to be able to augment the capabilities that we had. But unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful in getting those grants funded, and we just or those proposals funded. So we decided that we were going to just bite the bullet and do it ourselves, as an internal AI initiative in order to be able to move forward, because we were afraid the rest of the world is just going to move past us until and we want to be able to again be as topical technology wise and content wise as possible for things. So that introduces again this new AI initiative. I don't have another term for AI initiative. If they want to call themselves the AI group or whatever else, then I'm also quite fine with that. So, just as a reminder, I and many of us are critical components of existing commercial infrastructures that basically have the goal of making textbooks unaffordable for students. Now, that's not the stated goal, but the point is to be able to milk students for as much as they got. And this is difficult at the current state of the economy, or even the past states of the economy, because it's been unreasonable in the expectations of what students had to contribute. So OER, Open Educational Resources, provides the opportunity in order to break that chain and do a different approach in order to be able to do things. Now, we've been doing this for close to 19 years, which sounds kind of scary when I say that verbally, but nonetheless, we've been pursuing these sort of things. So the way we've been pursuing this is LibreText, which is a successor project to the what was originally started in 2008, which was the ChemWiki project, as a project in order to facilitate all the things necessary in order to take the place of commercial publishers from the classroom. Yeah. And that is more than textbooks. That's textbooks, homework systems, answering materials. It's now AI capabilities and other components associated with that. So that's the reason why we don't just say we're a publishing platform. We have that, but we have lots of other parts that, as we collectively call the LibreVerse, that's meant in order to be able to advance that forward. Within the context of AI, that means that each of these components, we're particularly interested in saying, how can we use AI in order to push forward our goals for textbooks or our goals for homework or our goals for ancillary materials and such like that. And some of them we'll be discussing here. There are many goals that we have written down that we are not going to be initially targeting here, at least until we get some significant financial investment in what we're doing here. So the LibreText project, again, our goal is to be able to provide our open education without the profit, and to be able to take the place of the commercial publisher in the classroom. So that means we focus on both content construction, content dissemination, content curation, technology development, and this corresponding implementation and updating. We go through various levels of development in various partners in order to be able to advance open community. And then last year, we just released our professional development arm, which we call the LibreText Academy, in order to facilitate training and professional development, or to be able to help move campuses forward in terms of building projects as possible. And the goal behind all these things is to say, how low can we go in order to be able to make this thing sustainable? And that's the opposite of commercial price, which is saying, how high can we go in the price tag before we break the system? And what they're discovering is they're still able to push the price tag of these things. And there's been a dip for the cost of textbooks for the last 5 years, but it's starting to go up again. So, I mentioned the LibreVerse. If you're unfamiliar with the LibreVerse, you can access it via what we call the Launchpad. That's at launchpad.libretext.org. It's freely available for people in order to tap into. All the textbooks are available. Some of the resources require accounts in order to be able to access. Those are freely available, what we call Libre One accounts, to instructors and to students. Instructors obviously have more access to things than students. For example, our Adapt homework system is a corpus of 300,000 questions that's in multiple technologies that any instructor can have access to use as they see fit. As a question bank. If they want to use it as a homework system, then we want them to be able to contribute to the sustainability of the project, operating at cost, again, not at profit. That's the reason why whenever money does come around the bend, we are oftentimes 4 to 5 times cheaper than anything else out there and 10 times more powerful and such. And that's something that I'm willing to stand on record in order to be able to argue. So that is the LibreVerse. The key point I'm trying to emphasize within this context of this proposal, or not this proposal, this presentation, is that our AI initiative is meant in order to augment our libraries, these 16 independent libraries that host 1.5 million pages of content, but to also augment the other components, whether we're talking about the Adapt homework system, or we're talking about the Forge, which is long form writing assignments, Jupyter, which is data science and computer science infrastructure, or being able to just facilitate general remediation of accessibility and other things that are required for both ethical and legal requirements. So, I just want to mention this, and I already did, but it's worthwhile to really reinforce it. What distinguishes us from other projects? Well, first, we're a not-for-profit. So we take that very seriously. This is in contrast to other for-profit alternatives like Pressbooks, Lumen Learning, other commercial publishers that are starting to open wash their content, but still have the same goal of maximizing profit. And the second one is that we are very much involved in the curation effort of the content that we host. So we go through and update things. We don't just host them and let it sit there. The buck doesn't stop at publishing. In fact, that is half the game. You need to be able to continually update things and move things forward, as most of us or all of us in academia would be able to agree with. But in the sake of this discussion, what's particularly important for promoting AI here is the magnitude of the content that we have. I already mentioned before, we have 1.5 million pages of content, and we expect to scale it up significantly due to various initiatives that we have. For example, we just signed a contract with the California Community College System. So all 116 community colleges are now within They have free access to our infrastructure across the board. That's 2.2 million students that are able to contribute and move things forward. That's a 5-year grant, and we expect it to massively increase the capabilities, or at least the size of our corpus. The second one is the impact of dissemination of the corpus. So in the last 19 years, we've built an infrastructure such that we've distributed somewhere in the order of 1.6, 1.7 billion with a B page views. So it's impossible to do a search for academic material without coming up with LibreText in the search. If you're doing it in chemistry, it's almost always the first entry that's out there. And that is part of our mission in order to be able to distribute our content, distribute knowledge as freely as possible. In this case here, perfectly free. And that's thanks to the support that we had from federal governments and state governments in order to be able to enable that. So one way you can view that what we're doing is we're building a bigger bucket of Legos. Those are buckets of Legos that are either parts of books or parts of questions that you can then interchange and use as you want to be able to move forward. And that's part of the greater scope of what the LibreVerse provides. And I'd love to be able to talk about that in more detail, but that's beyond what's important for this AI session. Other than the fact it standardizes, it centralizes, it makes things interconvertible. You can build collections like books, flexibility, and curatability. But for the AI perspective, it's the standardization. So you can actually go to one site and you have 1.5 million pages of content that you're able to tap into and million of images in order to be able to do. So you can actually implement AI at scale just by actually doing a few little tweaks that would be very difficult in order to implement in a distributed fashion. This is just an example in order to show the impact. I've already said these numbers several times. This is even some old pictures off of here, sort of pre-COVID, before we actually, you have a little bit of the COVID bump here. We have 1.5 million pages of content, 300,000 questions. We have about 3,500 books in place. We have accumulated about 10 millennia of reading on our platform, and we are growing exponentially. So fine. What's this mean for the current state of affairs? Well, the times they are changing. AI has come around the bend here. It's having profound effects on how students are interacting with the material in the classroom, how faculty are interacting with the material in the classroom, and there are lots of questions and concerns about where that's actually going to go. Now, that right there is a topic of a bigger discussion, which typically requires a little bit of alcohol in order to really appreciate fully. But the point of the matter is that AI as a technology provides the opportunity in order to really amplify many aspects of what we're trying to advance within the LibreText project and the open project and the open community as a whole. So we wanted to say, okay, fine. What can we use AI subject to legal concerns, subject to quality concerns, subject to ethical concerns in order to be able to advance our mission that's out there? And I'm very happy in order to be able to announce some of the things that we've done, but more interestingly, I think some of the things that we're going to be doing in the near future. So when it comes to AI, bigger is better, although not always 100% better. There's a lot more involved in it, but typically, if you've looked at the capabilities of AI models out there, it's predicated on the amount of parameters that put into it. In other words, it's predicated on how much stuff was trained in the model in order to be able to put together. And the more material you have, the more powerful it is. Now we could talk about it scaling off and not scaling properly in the same way, and that's a perfectly fine discussion. But the key point here is if you have access to lots of content, validated content that you're able to use within your infrastructure in order to advance it, it could be an exceedingly powerful approach in order to move forward. And of course, LibreText has lots of content in order to be able to capitalize on that. And that's one of the real beauties of the synergy between what AI provides and what we have created already within the LibreVerse. So, fine. So let's talk about this initiative. So this initiative just started last month. We have 3 people who are involved in them, and all 3 of them are here. So Drew Parker, who's going to be the director of the AI initiative, Johnny Fung, who's going to be one of the AI analyst, developer, and extraordinaire, and Neil Voss, who's going to be focusing on adapt, and he's also just as much of an extraordinaire as everybody else on this team. And the intent is for this arm to be focusing on really augmenting the infrastructure that we have within LibreText. While we have lots of things we want to be able to address, and no doubt as AI advances, which is advancing quickly, we're going to be having to pivot at different points in order to capitalize on new technologies. The first three things that we wanted to be able to address is what I wanted to end, or at least focus on the rest of this discussion. And that is first the building of an AI engine that facilitates searching and tutoring. That right there is not just grabbing a model and throwing it in, like prompt engineering, which is relatively simple in order to do with modern AI APIs and endpoints, but to build it off of what's called a RAG, or a retrieval augmented generation tool. The ability that takes a book that a faculty member has built, a faculty member has adopted, a faculty member has remixed, customized for their exact purposes, chew that up and spit that into the model so that when you ask questions, it's based within the context of that book. Yeah. That would obviously be scaled up so you can do searches across all the books that are out there, whether they're focusing on your field or subfield or the entire library that's out there. And it provides an exceedingly powerful mechanism to capitalize on this corpus of content that we have, but provide it in a customized manner that gives you other benefits, like being able to give you references to where it is in the book that you can click on in order to be able to read the raw or the source material that's in there, instead of just saying regurgitating stuff that you should be concerned about because of hallucinations and other issues associated with AI. The second one is the accessibility remediation tool. Most of us are familiar, hopefully, with the oncoming Department of Justice rules for accessibility for online material associated with education, at least for public institutions. And we have been working on, well, we've established over multiple years various bots or scripts that go through our library in order to be able to update and fix and change certain things in order to ensure both standardization but also remediation of issues. If things need to be fixed, styles need to be changed, or accessibility needs to be updated. Now, that technology has been, let's call it old school technology based off of what's called regular expressions. If you know what regular expressions are, then you know about the pain that's associated with them. If you don't know about them, don't worry about it. The key point is it's not AI. It's a simpler approach in order to do to work with basically wildcards in search, find, and replace. We want to augment that with AI in order to be able to say, here's a book, here are pages in the book, let's update them, because the vast majority of OER was created without full accessibility implemented. And there are many aspects associated with that. For example, alt text that I'll talk about momentarily, color codes, and other stuff that's involved in terms of compliance with what's called WCAG, or the web content accessibility conformance or compliance. I can't remember what this is related to. WCAG. Okay, I got the wrong acronym, but we'll forget about that. The last one I want to talk about is capitalizing on AI in order to help facilitate the construction of homework assessments. And that right there can be relatively simple in terms of being able to take a book, chew it up, like build it, throw it within the RAG system, the engine, number one, and then out comes, when you request it, 5 to 10 questions that are particularly important of them. Those things can be relatively simple, multiple choice, true, false, the sort of questions that you put into learning management systems, which in the grand scheme of homework, sophistication of homework questions is like nearly at the bottom, but it is actually much better than nothing. So the goal that we want to do is to take, the 3,500 books that we have, and most of them don't have accompanying homework because they weren't built with homework, and use AI in order to build a homework system. But go beyond just simple multiple choice or true false, and start to capitalize on the other capabilities that we have within our homework system, which is we call adapt. And one of the technologies in there is based off of a technology we integrated called web work. which Neil will probably talk about momentarily. And there's a video that shows how he was able to use AI in order to build web work questions and even code them up, test them out, and have them self-program or self-vibe, may be another term for describing that, and such. So I'll let them talk a bit more about that after in each time that I address that. So the first one is the RAG, or the RAG on one. So this is what Drew is going to be targeting first, although all three of them should be talking and interacting and working with it. And the idea, again, behind the RAG is not just to have a large language model that you prompt questions and have it come out with, but to actually take content that we have and spit it into what's called a vector database that you can then take snippets of and use that within your AI model in order to be able to get answers to questions. And I hope to be able to build a sophisticated Socratic tutoring system in order to accompany the book and out there. And I emphasize the word Socratic because I'm not interested in just giving the answer out off of there, because there's plenty of companies out there that will do that for free. Most of the time they want to do it for some sort of price point off of that. So I have a philosophical issue in multiple fronts with these guys. And again, the key point here is because we have so much content that will go into our database, it will be an exceedingly powerful complement to just basically the textbook that's out there. So with that, Drew, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what you want to do beyond just the simple description that I actually put down there?
Sure, absolutely. Hey, everybody, I'm Drew Parker. Um, so let's see, background, for some background information. I was a CUNY professor for over a decade. Definitely have saw the sort of rise of AI. I was still professing um, when generative AI hit the scene. And in the time since, I've left academia, gone to work as a software engineer, specifically prototyping in the AI space. And so I've taken my lessons learned, I'm bringing them back to the education sphere, and so I've kind of bringing that perspective of one, my concerns of measuring my students' level of understanding combined with my drive to make sure that they are supported at all times, including 2 a.m. when they want to send me emails about how to do X, Y, or Z. So with this particular first effort, um, we want to be able to scope the student to a specific textbook or set of resources as defined by the instructor, so that I know, especially in the math, that my background is mathematics, but I'm sure in chemistry, physics, all fields as well, there's a great deal of preference or specificity in terms of terminology and some of the details that vary from textbook to textbook. And so making sure that students' queries and interactions are scoped to the actual course itself and any supporting materials. Also making sure that we keep students on task, and as Delmar alluded to, implement Socratic styles that don't involve simply giving students the answers that they're looking for necessarily, but rather to help guide them towards coming to a conclusion on their own. How do we do, Delmar?
No, it's great. Great, Drew. I should mention here, and I hinted at it before, but the point behind how we operate is to operate as cheaply as possible in order to address the scope of our mission. And the concern that we have with AI is that AI actually costs money in order to be able to operate. So we need to figure out a way in order to try to do what we want to do, but do it in such a way that it does not put a financial barrier in terms of being able to use these technologies. So that means that in addition to actually building them, we're going to be carefully reviewing the state of art for open source alternatives to commercial products like ChatGPT or OpenAI, Claude, and other tools that are out there. I'm not entirely sure that we'll be successful at it, but we are committed in order to be able to make this operate as cheaply as possible. That way we don't need to get many external resources in order to maintain the infrastructure, and heaven forbid if we if we have to somehow get campuses in order to be able to buy into this, in order to allow students, in order to be able to use it forward. So,
And if I can add,
yeah,
this particular architecture goes a long way in towards reducing those costs. In that the LLMs that you use for interaction don't have to be as intelligent or well sourced as we are providing them directly with the source material we want uh, for the conversation at hand.
great. Okay. With that, I can't figure out how to unpin you. So you might be the face on here. Does anyone know how to unpin someone on here?
Pinning is just for you, Delmar. It's not global
Okay,
for
so I
the
can't even get
thing.
any
So
help from anybody.
there's
Thanks.
spotlight and pinning. So, but
Yeah,
I
but I
think
can't
he's
figure
usually
out how
the
to.
three dots in the corner.
What
But
was
I
it?
don't
The
know
three dots where?
If you just
if you
mouse over
if you go under
the,
Drew's
Yeah,
go to
I've been
Drew's
going
picture,
there,
there's
but
the three dots in the upper
oh,
right.
remove pin. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking for just unpin. Heaven forbid. Okay, well, anyways, here we go. So that right there, this RAG will have a lot of capabilities that we'll be able to tap in and use productively. Again, relying on the central corpus as the key point in order to be able to address these things. So let's move on to the second effort. And that is associated with something that I alluded to before, which is this new Department of Justice accessibility um, uh, with Disabilities Act. So in 7 weeks, she might be close to 6 weeks now. The Department of Justice regulations will provide teeth to the ADA in campuses in order to ensure that all online material has to be accessible. And as I mentioned before, most OER material in the past was not created with accessibility in mind. Many of the OER materials today are not created with accessibility in mind. And even many of them that are created with accessibility in mind don't do as good of a job as what's necessary in order to be compliant with this Department of Justice regulation. So with 1.5 million pages of content, if we had to remediate accessibility manually, it would take the rest of the decade in order to be able to address it. And that doesn't even take into account the scaling that we expect our corpus to be able to do. So that means that we want to be able to use technologies in order to advance that. And for the longest time, we were expecting to be able to capitalize on regular expressions in order to be able to do that, which could work, but it would be a painful process in order to be able to handle. And it would only be possible in the fact that we standardize our content because we're then able to work off of that. AI then introduces us with the greater capabilities in order to do that. So just as a reminder, there are two ways that we can address inaccessible content as faculty or as campuses. One is to archive, which is technically to take the content and take it offline. I shouldn't say offline. That's just one option. It's to take it out of circulation as a primary resource to be used in your classroom. And you should hopefully be hearing more about this from other presentations focusing on accessibility. Archiving, again, could be taking something what's online and putting it into a Dropbox or some offline activity behind that. My concern with that, in contrast to the online alternative, which is just basically making it online and putting a warning sign on this as archiving. There are a few other details associated with it, but that's the key point, is that if you take things offline, which is I think is what most people are going to be doing, that if you actually don't have a process to bring it back online, we're now taking stuff out of the corpus of open community because of accessibility compliance, and then we've lost something. So we have the situation, instead of moving forward off of everyone's contributions, we're going to be taking a step back. And that right there, I'm very concerned about. So what do you do have what can you do other than archiving? Well, you can remediate, fix the problem. That's a time-consuming process, which of course AI is going to be able to come in or be able to do that. Johnny Fung is going to be discussing that in a moment. He's going to be taking the lead on that as part because he has some experience building these things. This is some examples of what we've established so far in terms of trying to handle accessibility using computers. So for example, our editing capabilities provides a real-time editor that will run through the code on the page or what's the markup on the page, and identify certain issues that need to be remediated and provide a fix in order to be able to handle it. This is a page by page real-time checker and is able to do quick checks. We want to be able to make this do a book by book checker in order to be able to handle all the range of criteria that we have. That includes more than just headers, but lots of other things. Alternative tags or alternative descriptions is a situation. Again, I hope most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with it, but just to be clear, you have an image and you have a text description behind that image that you're able to take the place of the image. If you can't see the image, like it doesn't resolve, that's what you see when your internet is slow, or if you require a screen reader in order to be able to read the page because you have a visual disability. So this is an example of where the alt text is too long. We have a requirement that it has to be less than 150 characters. That's a different issue, but the key point is that this is one of the most infringing accessibility component in OER, hands down across the board, because most people who create OER are subject matter experts that are not aware of alt text requirements out there. However, let me skip over that. We implemented last year our AI co-authoring tool. So it's our first foray into AI that essentially goes through page by page in a book. And it's meant in order to address some of the things that I'm comfortable with AI doing. Now, I'll be upfront here. I'm uncomfortable with using AI to construct content on a book by itself. It just, I haven't gotten to that level. I am comfortable with AI making summaries of content on the page. I'm comfortable with AI making alt text for content on the page. I'm comfortable with AI coming in and applying and identifying keywords for content on the page that is meant to be used for search capabilities and meant to be searched for meant to be how you create indexes for a book, which is oftentimes missing in most OER that's out there. So that's what the co-authoring tool provides right now for anyone who wants to start creating a book with one of the freely available accounts that I talked about before. So this is an example where it goes through a book page by page, pulls up the page. You can write a summary off of it. You can generate the alt text for it. It'll make some alt tags associated. But as with all AI, we need to have a mechanism in order to provide some human overview. So we're able to go in and modify what they've constructed, edit it, delete tags, add tags, and curate it. So that's why I call this a co-authoring tool instead of just basically an authoring tool. And that's a fundamental approach that we're going to be taking for all the AI initiatives that we're doing here. So we want to be able to use AI to facilitate compliance with the Department of Justice rules, or the WCAG. And at that point, we brought in Johnny Fung, who is master extraordinaire in many things. If you look at his LinkedIn, every day he's presenting a new project that you can take into, and he's going to be focusing on this initially. And such. So I'll let Johnny introduce himself and talk a little bit about where this is going.
Hello, Johnny Fong here. By day, I work for the Los Angeles Community College District, and then by nights and weekends, I'm AI engineering projects for LibreTexts and other endeavors. And so, in terms of what sort of accessibility and remediation tools I've been working on for the past few months within LACCD has been mostly uh, Canvas, online Canvas course remediation, as well as like website. And a lot of it has to do with like taking PDFs, documentations, converting them into HTML, ADA compliant, WCAG compliant HTML content. And by doing that, it's really just figuring out the workflow uh, and utilizing specific models. So, for example, a PDF, we need some type of OCR model to do the document parsing, and then it goes on to um, a uh, a uh, a regular model to convert it into HTML. So it's all about like just finding out the workflow and converting things. So there's tools that I built that can crawl a website, find documents, parse them, convert them into ADA compliant HTML, and then from there on swap out the PDF or documents with that sort of content. And it our deadline, the Title II is what it's what's from the DOJ. That is the deadline is April 24th for larger institutions and businesses, but I think smaller entities have until 1 year extension on that.
That's technically true. However, the definition that you use for defining big and small is not based on the campus. It's based on the constituency of the community around it. So you have to be in a really rural uh, uh, area with a small campus in order to get the extended deadline off of that. And I can guarantee that everything in LA is going to be necessary in order to deal with this. And I think the breakdown is something like 10,000 students or so. So that's a good point in order to bring up. So thank you, Johnny. We have high hopes of really spinning this out so that we can actually ensure that our stuff is up to snuff with as less pain as possible within our infrastructure. And again, we can do this because we've centralized our content so that people can, so we can actually implement these things at scale instead of snippet by snippet that you'd get in a fragmented approach. So, um, I'm going to skip over that and get into the last part that we have here. So the last of the three primary efforts that we'll be focusing on in this AI initiative has to do, again, with using AI in order to facilitate the construction of homework assessments. And there are many, many, many too many companies out there that are doing this for people, obviously with a price tag in order to be able to implement it. And most of them are just basically a few prompt engineering into ChatGPT in order to be able to process that. So that's not meant in order to be disparaged. Well, actually, I guess it's disparaging of them, but I'm not trying to attack them necessarily. I'm just trying to say if you want to do this in an easy fashion, you can do this reasonably well. If you want to do this in a more sophisticated fashion, then it requires some sophisticated approach, and that's what Neil has been working on for the last half a year. And again, the idea behind here is to use AI to augment the construction of questions. There are four subsections associated with this effort. So one is the first one that I mentioned, is just basically using AI to generate high quality homework questions. But Adapt has other capabilities than just being able to make a question and deliver it. One is what we call learning trees, which is an adaptive learning infrastructure in order to provide context around the skills necessary to be successful in questions. And AI is well suited in order to be able to build those things. We also wanted to be able to use AI to help facilitate open-ended grading. That right there is a bigger issue in order to address an individual question construction. And I'll leave it at that. And the last one is to essentially use AI in order to help facilitate learning analytics in order to evaluate either external or internal self-assessments of content out there. But again, number one is the one that we're starting with first. And with that, I will let Neil Voss, who's here, who'll be taking that lead, introduce himself and talk a bit more about what he's been doing and what we plan on doing.
Hi, I'm Neil Voss. I'm a associate professor of biology at Roosevelt University, and I just have I mean, I haven't thought as global as the rest of the team, but I just have a huge like collection of homework that I've kind of written up over the years, and I've been trying to come up with a an efficient way of getting it into the adapt system. And so I came up with ChatGPT is kind of, I can give it my problem, but it's not really able to kind of translate it over directly without having lots and lots of errors. So the goal is to, you know, come up with a system to do it. I mean, I'm not having the AI like necessarily write the content. It's more of adapting the structure of the question from one place to another. And so I'm not as worried about, it hallucinating incorrect facts as long as it sticks to what the content was, but it needs to get the format of the question in a way that we talked about web work earlier as one way. It's essentially, computer code, which AI has been shown to be pretty good at, and being able to evaluate it, say a multiple choice question in the correct way where it knows how to put up the radio buttons and that B is the correct answer. And as a coder, it can be difficult to kind of get the language down, but if you have a big corpus of information, we talked about how the AI was going to have just the content you're focused on for the LLM. In this case here, I'm giving the AI the content it's focused on for translating the question over. And I also give, using AI agents, I'm actually able to have the agent test the code as well. And that those two kind of things put together has made it really easy for me to translate questions over. And I'm able to kind of write new questions and bringing things other. I definitely encourage you to kind of check out the 40-minute video we did on Wednesday to just kind of show some examples that I've done. So.
Great. And a link to that video is already in the chat. I just put it in there a few moments ago. I encourage you to take a look at it. It has lots of details. So if you like talking about the details of AI, this will go into it. So it's a lot less topical than what we're talking about right now. So thank you, Neil. I will mention that we are going to, in addition to expanding the scope and the number of people who are part of this AI initiative, we're also going to be implementing a community, I wouldn't call it advisory, but feedback mode that provides individuals who are working within the open landscape in AI in order to provide some guidance in terms of where they like to see us be able to advance these things. So if you have a desire in order to be part of that, please contact us or look forward to hearing more about it in one of our newsletters when we actually release it. So with that, let me just close this thing off with a little bit. And this is far too much text that should be on any PowerPoint presentation. But the key point of what we're trying to do, and this goes into a bit more than what was discussed in the 3 initiatives, is our effort in order to be able to take AI and try to augment various components of the LibreVerse in order to be able to move. Sometimes I refer to this as the kitchen sink approach in order to be able to advance it. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I have my goals for every one of them. There are also other goals or other efforts that we have that may or may not be successful. And by having a broad scope of what we're doing, it provides an opportunity to ensure that we will have at least several home runs in what we're actually implementing. So just as a reminder, an instructor account is free for the LibreVerse. You can access it or request it at register.libretext.org. We manually confirm each instructor account because we need to make sure that the corpus of questions that we have in Adapt are truly protected away from students being able to tap into them. Yeah. If you're interested in taking a closer look at the LibreVerse and its capabilities, you can look at the Launchpad. That will show you that with your account. If you want to look at the YouTube channels that I mentioned before, you can also see videos on various components associated with that. And that includes also our training, which you can get access to on our blog at LibreTexts.org. And such. And the key point in order to emphasize near the end here is that this is going to be a slow, gradual process. Don't be surprised as you see things change with greater capabilities as we start to advance it, because we essentially have crossed, in my opinion, the Rubicon, and it's just basically going to be all moving forward. So with that, I'll end with the future is open. I'm happy to ask or answer any questions that people may have regards to this.